888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. Larry Elder, ReliefFactor.com studio. Later on this hour, we will be interviewing the niece of the late civil rights icon, Dr. Martin Luther King. Her name is Alveda King. I want to ask her what she thinks of Joe Biden making this following assertion.
But even Dr. King's assassination did not have the worldwide impact that George Floyd's death did.
Get her thoughts on Joe Biden's assertion that even the death of Martin Luther King, the assassination of Martin Luther King, didn't have the worldwide impact that the death of George Floyd did.
Oh.
According to Gallup poll, U.S. national pride falling to a record low.
Let me tell you something. For the first time in my adult lifetime, I'm really proud of my country.
Supreme Court ruled 6-3 in a ruling that shocked a lot of people, that the Civil Rights Act covers sexual orientation, not just sex. In my opinion, it is legislating from the bench. If Congress wanted the Civil Rights Act of 64, to include sexual orientation, all they have to do is pass a law. For the Supreme Court to interpret the word sex to mean sexual orientation, two different things, mind-boggling. We're going to be talking with Peter Kirsanow next hour. There is a move, believe it or not, to get rid of something called Proposition 209 here in California that got passed in the 90s that says you cannot use race, you cannot use gender as a criterion when it comes to admissions into colleges and universities, at least state-owned ones. When it comes to government contracts, when it comes to government hiring. Now the Democrats, this is a state that is run entirely by the Democratic Party. Now they want to get rid of that so they can have, I guess, color-coordinated hiring. Trump says Democrats have failed to police their cities. Let's start there.
Mr. President, Seattle. You said last week on Seattle that if the mayor of Seattle, the governor of Washington, didn't take steps to end the occupation of the Capitol Hill neighborhood, you would step in and you would do something. 100%. They still haven't ended it. They're negotiating. Are you considering taking action?
You know, they're negotiating garbage removal. These people have taken over a vast part, a major part, a very good part of a place called Seattle. Seattle's big stuff. That's a major city. And we have a governor who's a stiff, and we have a mayor who said, oh, this is going to be a love fest. And by the way, these are violent people that took it over. These are not people that are nice people. I saw on your network today, John. I saw what went on with the hitting and the punching and the beating and all the other things going on in Seattle. And you have a governor that doesn't do a damn thing about it. And you have a mayor that doesn't know she's alive. She's talking about it's going to be a love fest this summer. Now, if they don't do the job, I'll do the job. And I've already spoken to the Attorney General about it. But if they don't do the job, we will do the job.
What can you do?
About 10 different things. Any one of which will solve the problem quickly.
Can we go through a whole list or a partial list?
We don't have to go through any list. We can do a lot of things. I think it's incredible also that the radical left press doesn't cover it. They're acting like nothing happened. You turn on the news, you look at the news, you don't even see stories about it. If the right ever took over a city, conservative Republicans took over a city, it would be the biggest story in history. You can't even find stories about Seattle. It's incredible. They've taken over. We'll see. I'll tell you what, the American public is very angered by that. Seattle is a major, important city. And the Democrats, I guess you say radical left, but it's not even radical left. It's just Democrat. Where we have our problem are Democrat-run cities. If you look at Minneapolis, if you look at other cities that have had trouble, they're Democrat in virtually every case that I can think of. I can't think of one other case. These are Democrat-run cities. Minneapolis, where the police are told to run for your lives. Don't do anything. And if I didn't get involved and send in the National Guard, and it was at my insistence that they did that, and as soon as I did that, everything stopped in Minneapolis 4 days, 5 days later.
Timeline you're thinking here, Seattle?
There's no timeline. We're watching it very closely. These are violent people that are dealing violently, and I think what I'd like to see before we do something, I'd like to see the press get in and cover it, because it's not that they're covering it badly, they're hardly covering it all. Think of this. A group, Antifa and others, radical lefts, they went into a major U.S. city, Seattle, and they took over a big percentage of that city, and the press doesn't want to cover it. And we have a mayor who's scared stiff. She doesn't know what's happening. We have a governor that's one of the most overrated politicians in the country. He just ran for president. He got less than 1%. He actually probably, I would have said less than 0, but I'm not sure that's possible. He got nothing. He got no votes, nothing. The whole thing, the guy was out there fighting. At the end, he got 0, right? 0. So he failed. And now he goes back and they take over a city and he doesn't say anything about it. Worse, he said he didn't hear it. A day later, he said, I didn't hear anything about it. They took over a city, Seattle, and he said, I didn't hear anything about it. So look, the governor has to call out the troops, do what he has to do, has to call out the National Guard, has to do something. Because, the problem with what happened in Seattle is it spreads. And all of a sudden they'll say, let's do some other city. And let's do another one. And we're not going to let it happen. So timing-wise, hey, we're all set to go. We're watching the process. But the most amazing thing about the process is how the fake news media doesn't want to cover it. To me, that's the most amazing thing. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
He criticized local authorities in Seattle, and if they don't do the job,
these people have taken over a vast part, a major part, a very good part of a place called Seattle. Seattle's big stuff. That's a major city. And we have a governor who's a stiff, and we have a mayor who said, this is going to be a love fest. And by the way, these are violent people that took it over. These are not people that are nice people. I saw on your network today, John. I saw what went on with the hitting and the punching and the beating and all the other things going on in Seattle. And you have a governor that doesn't do a damn thing about it. And you have a mayor that doesn't know she's alive. She's talking about it's going to be a love fest this summer. No, if they don't do the job, I'll do the job. And I've already spoken to the Attorney General about it. But if they don't do the job, we will do the job.
And he says we want law and order done fairly, justly, and safely. And to that end, signed an executive order on police reform in the Rose Garden. It bans chokeholds except if the officer's life is at risk. Isn't that what the departments are already doing anyway for the most part? He also said the DOJ would provide grants to police departments seeking independent credentialing for use of force and de-escalation training. I thought all the major departments had already done that. The National Fraternal Order of the Police, the largest law enforcement union in the country, praised the order and said, quote, it strikes a great balance between the vital need for public and officer safety and the equally vital need for lasting, meaningful, and enforceable police reform. In our view, President Trump and congressional leaders are working constructively with law enforcement and community stakeholders to undertake earnest law enforcement reforms that will make our officers and the public they protect safer, end of quote. The mayor of New York, Bill de Blasio, says that the executive order does not go nearly far enough.
So the overall goal is we want law and order, and we want it done fairly, justly. We want it done safely, but we want law and order. This is about law and order, but it's about justice also, and it's about safety. So I think we're going to do a good job tomorrow. I think you're going to see some things that a lot of people thought would not happen. You wouldn't be able to get them done, but we'll get them done. Again, though, I want to emphasize it's possible the House can also, on top of this, I spoke to the various leaders, on top of this can get something. But I think this will be very comprehensive tomorrow.
Later on this hour, Dr. Alveda King. What would her uncle think about the protests and the riots? I'm Larry Elder.
You're listening to The Larry Elder Show.
This is Owen Strand for townhall.com. A call is going out now for the dismantling of the Minneapolis Police Department. The president of the city council said this when asked about what to do in the case of a break-in.
Yes, I mean, I hear that loud and clear from a lot of my neighbors. And I know, and myself too, and I know that that comes from a place of privilege, because for those of us for whom the system is working, I think we need to step back and imagine what it would feel like to already live in that reality, where calling the police may mean more harm is done.
There's no doubt that our cities and communities need restoration, including greater peaceful engagement between police and citizens. Yet the idea that wanting protection is privilege is not sound. In fact, it's absurd and won't restore anything. Police who act unjustly are accountable to the rule of law and must be. But there is no need to qualify what a society without police will look like. More harm will surely be done. May coming days bring greater safety and meaningful restoration. I'm Owen Strachan.
ADF, fighting for those whose religious freedom is being violated. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
I want to share with you Raynard Jackson's comments, because this came from the White House, where the president is sort of, in his way, on a listening tour. You know, I know that the rap against Donald Trump is that he doesn't listen to anybody, and that, of course, is a lot of hogwash. He does listen. He ultimately makes decisions based on his gut, on his instincts, on what got him to the White House in the first place. But quite frankly, anybody who's been around him recognizes he does spend a lot of time listening to advisors, listening to people who are willing to bend his ear. So here's Raynard Jackson.
But what I'd like to say to you, Mr. President, is kind of off the beaten path. I'd like to say to all the media assembled here that I wish they would quit lying about what you've done specifically for the black community. So you got radical liberal journalists like Joy Reid from MSNBC, Don Lemon from CNN, Roland Martin, who are putting more poison into the black community than any drug dealer, who are killing more black folks than any white person with a sheet over their face. How are they doing it? Spreading these lies about the economy you had, Mr. President, before the virus was a continuation of Obama. That's just factually not true. I have a degree in accounting. I keep up with the economy. They're lying. So to all these folks on MSNBC, CNN, Roland Martin, what, you're afraid to have real black Republicans who know what the hell they're talking about? If you want to know the truth, if you want us to dissect the Obama economy, let's do it. And I think, Mr. President, your record will win the debate. Thank you.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
That's a good question to ask a leftist friend. Do you agree with Lincoln said that America is the last best hope of mankind or of the earth? But they would say no. Typical article I have here, The Atlantic, which produces massive amounts of nonsense by intellectuals. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's become nihilistic. We are living in a failed state. The coronavirus didn't break America. It revealed what was already broken. And this guy's a staff writer, George Packer, for The Atlantic. I invite George Packer onto the show. It's useless. It's useless. They never debate. Isn't that interesting? Why don't they debate? We would go on any of their shows, any. I remember being on CNN. Don Lemon used to invite me pretty often. And everybody else disagreed with me. I don't care.
Hi, I'm white, I'm a female, and my father taught us all what to do when we got pulled over by the police. And it also included keep your hands on the steering wheel.
Hey, Larry, this is Alan Riverside. I wanted to defend that police officer in Atlanta, Georgia, about the tasing incident. First of all, they were making a lawful arrest from a guy who was intoxicated. A. B, he fought with police, and then he started to flee, and he aimed a taser at a police officer. Now, if he'd hit the police officer and incapacitated him, he could have taken the police officer's gun. So I think in that instance, he was totally warranted in shooting the fleeing criminal. And if he wasn't a criminal, why was he trying to flee? So this is a full course press against the police, and I frankly resent it. Thanks, Larry.
Hey, Larry, I love your show. When I was a teenager back in the 70s, my father was in the military, and we were stationed at Fort Rucker, Alabama. And he gave us the talk. And he told me and my two sisters that if we were ever stopped by military police or the civilian police, never argue with them, never try to make your point, do what the cop tells you to do, and then you'll be okay. So that's what we did. And Larry, I'm white, and that's what I was taught by my dad. So I don't think it makes any difference what color you are. Everybody needs to talk.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243, Larry Elder, ReliefFactor.com studio. I got a lot of mail about this. I'm going to comment on this in just a second. We're going to be speaking with Dr. Alveda King in just a few minutes. Peter Kirsanow next hour about the attempt to repeal Proposition 209 that got rid of the use of race and gender as a criterion in hiring and contracting and admissions to government schools here in California. They want to get rid of that. So much for the colorblind society that MLK envisioned. Now, Mike Lindell, the president and CEO of MyPillow, is helping. He's making face masks and is giving them free to hospitals all around the country. He's now offering great discounts on all of his products. Just go to MyPillow.com, click on the radio listener specials, and check out these amazing buy one, get one frees. Supima MyPillows, Giza Dream Sheets, MyPillow towels, Roll and Go Anywhere pillows, duvet covers, Giza pillowcases, bolster pillows, neck pillows, and if you buy Mike Lindell's book, What Are the Odds? From Crack Addict to CEO, you're going to get free shipping. You're going to get a $25 gift card. So just go to MyPillow.com, enter promo code Larry, or call 800-890-1843, and be sure to use promo code Larry. This letter I received from Mike. Mike is in St. Paul. Is typical of the many I received last night. Larry, I'm a former police officer for 12 years. A taser used by a police officer is a non-deadly force. A taser in the hands of a suspect is an extremely dangerous situation. If the suspect stuns the officer, they could easily grab the officer's gun and shoot them. And in this case, the suspect had the officer's stun gun and pointed it at them. The officer was completely justified in shooting the suspect, in my opinion. End of quote. Again, I got a number of letters just like that. 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243 if you'd like to comment. Here's another one I got about the talk. I mentioned yesterday on the show, and I mentioned it on the Hannity show, that my parents gave my brothers and me the talk. I think all parents give their sons and daughters the talk. And I must have missed the part where after my parents told me to be polite and to fully cooperate, they added, resist violently and, whenever possible, run. I don't recall that part of the talk. So, in that connection, I received the following letter from Pat. Larry, you said on Hannity you had the talk when you were a teenager. Actually, I had the talk when I was a kid. How to behave if having an encounter with the police. I hear via media that black teens always get the talk to ensure safety in public encounters. Again, I don't know any kid when I grew up whose parent did not tell him to cooperate fully with the police and to be respectful. I got the talk, Larry, in the 50s when I was a 65-pound, 4'11" white female teenager complaining about a local rural police officer with a fondness for harassing teens. My father sat me down and explained that even if I didn't respect the man, I must respect the uniform and preserve my own safety during the encounter. He explained that cops are people, and like all people, they tend to react to hostility with hostility. He explained that cops are in a dangerous job, and if I made it harder, it would probably end up harder for the cop and for me. His rules of conduct were simple. Be polite, respectful, and cooperative. Keep my hands visible at all times. Do not try to evade the police. If arrested, go peacefully and call for help at the station. He then reviewed my constitutional rights, but reminded me that those, and this was pre-Miranda, those rights would be better respected in the presence of other officers. I was a law-abiding kid, so police encounters were unlikely but not impossible. That talk held me in good stead through the protests of the 60s, traffic stops, witness to a violent crime, and as a victim of a violent crime. It's not just black teens, Larry, who need the talk. It's all civilians. People need to be reminded that respect usually garners respect in return. End of quote. I'll say again, I look at these encounters, whether it's Eric Gardner. In the case of Eric Gardner, that's the man who was selling Lucy's in New York, and a bunch of officers tried to arrest him. My quarrel is, why did the officers take their time away from pursuing violent criminals to go after a guy who was selling Lucy's? These are individual cigarettes. And in doing so, it deprives the city of the cigarette tax revenues. Why do they need the cigarette tax revenues? To pay for their bloated bureaucracy, for their outside pensions. And so somebody like this has to be dealt with. Otherwise, the whole apparatus of the city of New York collapses. So did we have a discussion about reining in some of the outside pension costs? No. Did we have a discussion about what we could do to reduce the size and cost and scope of government so that these kinds of things don't have to happen? No. But in the case of virtually all of these, had the suspect promptly cooperated, he, in the case of Sandra Bland, she would still be alive. 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. In Seattle, they have a community called Chaz, and an activist over in Britain who supports the removal of the statue of Winston Churchill doesn't know who Winston Churchill is. Peter, I'm pretty familiar with the legal community in Cleveland. As you know, I practice law there too. How are you treated? You're an out-of-the-closet conservative, no holds barred. I'm serious. How are you treated?
Actually, really well. Thus far, I'm knocking on something. I hope it's wood. Thus far, I've not had the kind of experiences that many have. I know, Professor Jacobson of my alma mater at Cornell had a lot of problems, and there are a lot of people in law firms, major corporations, who, if they don't toe the prevailing line, they find themselves in a lot of trouble. A lot of people have been fired. I work for a great firm. So far, so good, and I don't see any problems on the horizon. It helps to speak accurately and the truth, and when you've got the facts on your side and statistics on your side, I'm sure that there's a lot of political pressure out there. There are a lot of people who don't like hearing the facts and the truth, as you know very well, more than just about anybody in the country, Larry. But so far, we're doing pretty well.
My guest is attorney Peter Kirsanow, longtime member of the U.S. Civil Rights Commission. You heard that caller before I put you on, Peter, who complained about illegal aliens taking jobs away from American workers. This is something you've talked about for a long time.
We've been on this for a while, and I thank you, Larry, for your leadership on this, too. This is something that, many people, Republicans and Democrats, just glance aside. They don't want to acknowledge the fact that the one cohort that is most horribly harmed, and it's quantifiable, by illegal immigration are black males. Blacks generally, but black males, because we compete in the same markets. That is, illegal aliens compete in the same markets that many black males compete in, and because of the various benefits that employers can receive by virtue of employing illegal aliens, sometimes they prefer to employ illegal aliens. They can, they know that illegal aliens aren't going to be running to EEOC or OSHA or some other places, the Wage and Hour Division of the Department of Labor. So they will work at substandard wages, substandard conditions that Americans won't work at, or you can't force them to work at without having the government come down on you. And millions of blacks have been displaced over the years. But if you take a look at all of the data, and there have been a number of studies on this, at any given snapshot in time, nearly 1 million blacks are displaced as the result of the influx of illegal aliens into the workforce.
I think also, Peter, didn't you say that they also lose something to the tune of almost $1,800 a year because of the downward pressure put on their wages by the competition of illegal aliens?
Yeah, that's a good memory. I didn't say that. I'm simply repeating what economists that have appeared before the Civil Rights Commission have told us pursuant to their studies. I've testified a number of times before Congress on this issue, and there's been some extraordinary people. George Borhaus of Harvard, Steve Camarata from the Center for Immigration Studies. They actually are the ones that tease out the data. They've spent a considerable amount of time on this. And I wish more politicians, both on the left and the right, but mainly on the left, because the left is out there saying that illegal aliens are great. They're doing it because of a political imperative to do so. Look, illegal aliens may be fine individuals, but let's face it, they're displacing Americans, not just black Americans, but a lot of Americans across the board. And it's not just at the lower income levels. We have individuals who are coming in who are displacing people at medium income levels also, but it does palpable harm to the black community.
My guest is Peter Kirsanow, longtime member of the U.S. Civil Rights Commission. Peter, I saw a poll in Rasmussen that put Donald Trump's approval rating among blacks at 40%. Do you trust that number?
I trust that number as far as it goes. It's been a consistent number with Rasmussen and other polls for about 9 months now, and I've been talking about this with you and others. I don't think Donald Trump has a remote chance of getting anything anywhere near that in November, but that's not the point. What he's polling at right now in terms of approval ratings translates into a prohibitive electoral percentage for Democrats. By that I mean prohibitive in terms of their being able to win. As you know, Larry, Democrats must get 92% of the black vote and a robust black turnout in order to have any chance of prevailing in a national election. If Donald Trump is polling anywhere near 40% in terms of approval, that likely translates to anywhere from 12 to 14% in terms of the vote. That means blowout territory in terms of the general election. Hillary Clinton got 92% of the black vote in 2016, which is comparable to what Barack Obama got. But you got 4 million fewer black votes because the turnout was lower. Now, if Donald Trump can replicate his 8%, he probably prevails among black voters. But there's a fair chance that he can increase that, and then despite everything we hear, all the prognostications, the current polls, which largely are, in terms of electoral polls, largely are meaningless. It's too close to call at this point. But once we get closer to November, if that 40% approval or anything even remotely near that pertains, then I think that Donald Trump is going to be in good shape for the general election.
My guest is Peter Kirsanow. Peter, we're going to take a break. When I come back, I want to ask you about the effort to repeal affirmative action, race-based preferences in California, and get your thoughts on the protests taking place in the streets. My guest is Peter Kirsanow, also author of Target Omega. He's also done a sequel to that novel. 888-971-SAGE. We're taking your calls. I'm Larry Elder, Peter Kirsanow.
Larry will be right back. Stay tuned.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Is it of importance to us in interpreting the events of the last 2+ weeks that we are seeing all of this happen predominantly in hardcore Democrat-run cities, Gianna?
You know what's interesting about that is that Democrats won't even take credit for the fact that a lot of their policies have caused this to happen. You think about somebody like Joe Biden, who goes into George Floyd funeral with a video message talking about racial reconciliation and healing. Meanwhile, he's a big part of the reason why we have so much division in this country today. You think about the 94 crime bill. If we're going to talk about liberal cities, you can't forget about my hometown of Chicago, where you got a mayor there who provided, or rather asked for, 375 National Guardsmen in the city of Chicago and put them all in the downtown area. Meanwhile, the poor black areas on the south side and west sides are left to fend for themselves. You're talking about minority-owned businesses ruined, which they don't have money to come back. Some of these folks don't even have insurance. And that's across all American spectrums, whether you be white, black, or indifferent. We just lived through COVID. And now you got these liberals whose policies have created a huge mess from a financial tax purpose, a tax basis. And now you're disenfranchising poor people more by way of your policies, even through protests and looting. This is unimaginable. Who would have thought that this is where we would be in 2020? But if anybody is really listening and watching what's going on, this should be the best reason not to vote for liberals in any capacity. That's any office, whether it be president, Senate, House, state Senate, state House, mayor, any office. You shouldn't be voting for Democrats. And that's what I've taken away from this time.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. If anybody doubted how strong America is, look at all we've been through in the past few months and understand why we're still standing. We're still standing because we believe in the bonds that bring us together. We believe in freedom and liberty. And we believe that after all we've been through, nothing can defeat us. So let's cheer as America gets ready to rebuild and remake our lives bigger, stronger, better than ever before. Keep it here to find out how. We are the answer. Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
The 5-minute campaign strategy as of today? Would it be spend all your time, resources, energy, and policy on PA and Wisconsin?
Well, it's not going to be that simple because the Democrats are going to be attempting to, go after Arizona. They've signaled that if they win Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Arizona, Biden's president of the United States. They're going to go after Florida because it's perennially close. They're going to have to make a decision about North Carolina. Are they going to go there? They're thinking they want to try and do Georgia, but they may not have the resources. So the problem is you can't just simply say, okay, I'm going to put all my chips on, Wisconsin and Pennsylvania because they're going to have to be playing defense in these other states. Now, the advantage that Trump has is that he's got more resources and he's got a bigger, better digital infrastructure, which will matter a lot. So, he's going to be able to play in all those states. He can play in the 3 Great Lakes states. He can play in Iowa. He can play in North Carolina. He can play in Florida. He can play in Arizona. But I'm not yet certain that the Biden campaign is going to have the resources.
Larry posts new excerpts of the show on YouTube every day. Just go to youtube.com/The Larry Elder Show Radio and click on the subscribe button.
Yeah, Larry, this is Reed from Simi. I happened to see that video that they showed about the guy that was killed in Atlanta. He was fine until he started fighting with the cops and doing all that crazy stuff. If he would have just cooperated, gone to jail, he would have been fine. And as far as the idiots out there that burned down the Wendy's, how was Wendy's involved in that? They just happened to be where the guy was in the driveway. They had nothing to do with the whole thing. But now they lost a complete restaurant. These people are insane, and it should not be allowed to even be shown anymore. I mean, they should be arrested. I mean, how many people from Ferguson have been arrested? They had pictures and pictures and pictures of all those looters. Anybody been arrested? You've got to do things about that.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243, Larry Elder, ReliefFactor.com studio. Seattle woman went off on the protesters and that separate state called Chaz. We'll talk about that later on. My guest is Peter Kirsanow, author of Target Omega. Also has a sequel called Second Strike. He practices and teaches law, longtime member of the U.S. Civil Rights Commission. Peter, what is your opinion of these protests going on right now in the streets?
It's depressing. It really is. I mean, there's a lot of issues going on in the United States of America. My own view is that, look, we need to do whatever we can to make sure that we get rid of cops that are not doing the job properly, who are being abusive, engaged in brutality. I'm all for reforming that, but the fact of the matter is that the current narrative is not supported by fact. And the current narrative, unfortunately, is driving much of, look, you can peacefully protest, that's fine, but what's going on here is we're having rioting and looting and people being killed, although that's not being displayed on major media, but tons and tons of property damage, and the divisiveness is broad as has ever been in my lifetime. It's a horrible atmosphere right now, and it's being driven by a false narrative. The narrative is that, blacks are being disproportionately hunted down and shot by cops, and that racist whites are doing the same, as we saw in the awful Ahmaud Arbery video. Those things, I've not heard one person who said that what happened to George Floyd or Ahmaud Arbery was a good thing. Everybody's gotten universal condemnation, and in addition to that, these individuals have been arrested. The cops were fired. They could be they are going to be prosecuted. So the system is working in that regard. Yet we have got massive demonstrations. Many of those demonstrations have turned out to be violent. Yet the narrative that is fostering the rioting and the looting and the general discord is completely false. That is, that if you take a look at the actual numbers, and I've looked at the numbers, many of us have, and I know you have too, Larry. I've been doing this for nearly 20 years on the Civil Rights Commission. We've got the data. It is not difficult to find, and it's in multiple places. And the fact is that if you look at the stats, blacks are actually slightly less likely to be shot by cops than are white suspects similarly situated. There have been several studies on this. Maybe the most notable one is the Harvard study, where the researcher, Roland Fryer, who's also black, fully expected, from everything I understand, I don't know him, but I've read accounts of his study, fully expected that what he was going to find pursuant to his data was that it would support the narrative that blacks are being disproportionately shot by cops. And the data showed that's not true. Now, it wasn't overwhelming. There was only a slight number of more whites being shot than blacks by cops. But there are other studies. The National Academy of Science, I believe, is the study that has whites shot at a twice greater rate than blacks similarly situated. And there are other studies similar to that. And the data with respect to black involvement in crime shows that the number of blacks shot by cops is actually far less than one would expect, given black involvement in the sort of crimes that would involve a violent police confrontation, such as murder, rape, robbery, aggravated assault. And it's by a huge measure. It's unfortunate that the media, many of our politicians, don't get this stuff out. There's a political imperative to fan the flames. It's despicable what our media and many politicians are doing, and I also include in that the supine politicians, meaning some Republicans who know better but are deathly afraid to correct the record for whatever reason. Maybe because they're not articulate enough to marshal the resources, the data, to explain what's going on. But this is a time for clarity. It's not a time for cowardice. I know you've been on this, Larry. Some other people have been. We want the nation to heal. Very few people in the United States of America, it's no longer 1965 Alabama, thank goodness, or Selma, Alabama. But very few people in America, except the real loons out there, want any kind of racial division.
Peter, let's take a break right here, and then when we come back, I want to ask you about this move on the part of Democrats to repeal Proposition 209 so that race and gender become factors in the areas of hiring, contracting, and in college admissions. Now, 3-week quick start is just $19.95. Think of it as a trial pack. It can be at your door in just a couple of days. Over 70% of the people who order it go on to order more. Get back to the things you used to do: the walking, the hiking, the talking, the traveling, the sleeping through the night without waking up your mate. Over 70% of the people who order the 3-week quick start go on to order more. ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com, 800-500-8384, 800-500-8384.
If anybody doubted how strong America is, Look at all we've been through in the past few months and understand why we're still standing. We're still standing because we believe in the bonds that bring us together. We believe in freedom and liberty. And we believe that after all we've been through, nothing can defeat us. So let's cheer as America gets ready to rebuild and remake our lives bigger, stronger, better than ever before. Keep it here to find out how. We are the answer. Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
The 5-minute campaign strategy as of today, would it be spend all your time, resources, energy, and policy on PA and Wisconsin?
Well, it's not going to be that simple because the Democrats are going to be attempting to, go after Arizona. They've signaled that if they win Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Arizona, Biden's president of the United States. They're going to go after Florida because it's perennially close. They're going to have to make a decision about North Carolina. Are they going to go there? They're thinking they want to try and do Georgia, but they may not have the resources. So the problem is you can't just simply say, okay, I'm going to put all my chips on, Wisconsin and Pennsylvania because they're going to have to be playing defense in these other states. Now, the advantage that Trump has is that he's got more resources and he's got a bigger, better digital infrastructure, which will matter a lot. So, he's going to be able to play in all those states. He can play in the 3 Great Lakes states. He can play in Iowa. He can play in North Carolina. He can play in Florida. He can play in Arizona. But I'm not yet certain that the Biden campaign is going to have the resources to compete in all of those states. I mean, Florida is a $50 to $70 million proposition, and North Carolina is a $35 to $50 million proposition. So those, you start, and we haven't talked about Ohio. Isn't that interesting how little we talk about Ohio this election?
My home state has gained its confidence under Michael DeMine. My home state is solid red. You had to worry about it in your elections, but we've got that locked up now.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
For folks like you and me, this was a moment ago, especially for you. You lived through this. You were an adult. This was your friend. This was a student. And the parallels with what are happening in this country today are so striking. I mean, we could have talked about this book just because it's the 50th anniversary and it's a good book and it's interesting. And, you and I have met.
Live in the painfreerelieffactor.com studios, it's the sage, Larry Elder.
This is the thing. Everyone will say, well, I'm not a racist. Yeah, great. That's not good enough. What you need to be is anti-racist. And that means being intentional and deliberate and unapologetic in dismantling structural racism and systemic oppression and not being afraid to call it what it is, white supremacy. Because if you're going to come to this table, and for all of you that have aspirations of running for office, for whatever lived experience and identity that you represent, if you are not prepared to come to that table and to represent that voice, don't come. Because we don't need any more brown faces that don't want to be a brown voice. We don't need black faces that don't want to be a black voice. We don't need Muslims that don't want to be a Muslim voice. We don't need queers that don't want to be a queer voice.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243, Larry Elder, ReliefFactor.com studio. We post new excerpts from the show on YouTube every day. Just go to my new YouTube channel. It's called youtube.com/The Larry Elder Show Radio. Also, be sure and follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Instagram. My guest is Peter Kirsanow, member of the U.S. Civil Rights Commission, labor lawyer in Cleveland. Peter, that was Ayanna Presley, one quarter of the so-called squad. She was at a Netroots conference, and she said, we don't need any more brown faces who don't want to be a brown voice. We don't need any more black faces who don't want to be a black voice. It looks to me like the Democrats don't want a colorblind society, Peter. They want a color-coordinated society, and they're the ones doing the coordinating.
Yeah, perfectly put, Larry. I used to like the formulation of content of your character rather than color of their skin. I don't know what was wrong with that formulation, but apparently that's too passé. And it's being visited upon us now again with this effort in California, your home state, to repeal ACA or repeal Prop 209, which barred discrimination in college admissions, public contracting, and employment. And it's an effort to return to the state the ability to discriminate on the basis of race. It's being brought before the public or sold as some kind of diversity measure to enhance representation of underrepresented minorities. But as blacks should have learned and did learn to some extent back when the first slave ships started arriving on the west coast of Africa, beware of progressives bearing gifts. The attempt to repeal ACA 5 is going to do palpable harm to blacks especially. We have data on this, copious data on this. After Prop 209 was passed, remember, all the elites were saying this was going to cause an educational holocaust among blacks. Blacks would not be able to get into college anymore. They were going to be, shut out of jobs. The reverse was true. Graduation rates went up. Academic performance went up. And the reason for that is because the ability of blacks to go to schools that matched the preparation that they had received in high school enhanced their ability to compete, stay within STEM classes, and graduate. It was a rousing success, and now progressives want to repeal that so that they can use it for political advantage, assign benefits on the basis of race, discriminate on the basis of race so they can get the right percentages, according to them, of races with any particular class at a university. It's awful. Unfortunately, it's moving down the track very fast. It's already passed the General Assembly. It's before the Senate. If it passes there, it'll go on the ballot in November, and tons of money. All the right people, all the progressives, all the big money people, Hollywood is going to be behind this, and guess who's going to get hurt as a result? Graduation rates will go down, as will STEM participation among blacks and also Hispanics. This is something that's extraordinarily important. We must preserve the ideal of non-discrimination, the ideal that content of your character and your own hard work should prevail over the color of your skin, but that's not what progressives want to do. Understand, ACA 5, the repeal of 209, is a nuclear warhead with respect to the achievement levels of blacks in academia. It needs to be stopped, and just the principle of non-discrimination needs to be upheld. Call your state senators, particularly Tom Umberg, Richard Pan, Kathleen Gagliano. There's a whole host of them, Richard Roth, Jim Beal, Steve Glazer. Call them, say no on this particular issue. Stay alert. Don't let them pull the wool over your eyes.
Peter Kirschenau is my guest. Peter, I remember vividly this fight, Proposition 209. It was led by a black man named Ward Connerly. Ward Connerly happens to be married to a white woman, and one of his political opponents is a woman named Diane Watson. She was then a state lawmaker. Later on, she ran for and got elected to the House of Representatives in D.C. And she publicly said, Peter, let me tell you why you support this proposition. You're married to a white woman. You have no ethnic pride. You don't want to be black. You would rather be white. And the next day or so, when she was asked about it by reporters, Peter, she said, that's right, I said it, and I don't take it back. And never did, never apologized, and ran for and got elected to Congress.
Yeah, and that's really unfortunate and depressing. But the good news is Prop 209 passed. Blacks benefited as a result. Actually, all of California benefited as a result because more blacks graduate from college, became productive members of society.
Right.
If we go back to permitting racial discrimination, then blacks are going to be harmed, to a lesser extent Hispanics, but another cohort's going to be harmed, and that is Asian Americans, who are going to be affirmatively discriminated against. Right now, most of the heavy lifting in the opposition to this is being done by Asian Americans. Politicians better pay attention to that, pay attention to all Americans, and the fact that discrimination on the basis of race in admissions or contracting or employment is wrong, always wrong, despite the political imperatives that have you trying to impose it upon people so that you can gain a seat in Congress or in the House.
Peter, 30 seconds left. I just got to get your response to this. I thought the First Amendment allowed people to peaceably assemble. Here's what Chris Cuomo said.
And please, show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
Show me where it says protesters are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
And please, show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
I think it's called the First Amendment.
Yeah, right. And you know what? In addition to that, I think we should have affirmative action for one of the Cuomo brothers. This is, I mean, it's an embarrassment. I don't know what CNN is thinking, but, you know, look, I don't run CNN.
Peter Kirsanow, thank you very much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Looking forward to your movie premiering in a few days. I'm just excited about it. Congratulations and good luck.
Thank you, Peter. I think it might move the needle in the right direction one way or the other. Peter, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. Here is what Alicia said about Relief Factor. I am a grocery store worker, and I have been working doubles during this coronavirus shutdown. At 52 years old, my two bad knees are not getting a rest. I literally limp to and from.
But she made a plea to the black community, paraphrasing, is that I wish the black community would stand up to the violence and the crime and take a stand. Talking to her own people, I shouldn't say her own people, but the black people there. Because north side of Minneapolis is mostly black. It'd be interesting to hear her that comment, but they're not going to dig that up because it's the police fault.
Wonder if she's still alive. 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. Larry Elder, ReliefFactor.com studio. Christian, can you find out about this black female mayor of Minneapolis 30 years ago, he said? I never heard of it. See if she's still around. 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. Next hour, we're going to talk about this letter that a history professor from Berkeley sent. We were going to get to it yesterday, but we'll get to it in the third hour. Chris is in San Bernardino, California. Chris, you're on the Larry Elder Show. Thank you so much for calling. Chris, you there? Oh, we have a lousy connection. I'm sorry about that, Chris. Reggie is in Oakland, California. Reggie, you're on the Larry Elder Show.
Hey, Larry, thanks for having me on. How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Okay, yeah. Well, actually, I just kind of wanted to talk about these officers who are resigning around the United States right now, based on all the protests and politicians talking about defunding the police departments, also the reform. I feel like most of the officers that are resigned or that have resigned, they are in support of Derek Chauvin's actions.
Oh, really?
Those officers who support Derek Chauvin's actions.
Wait, Reggie, I hate to cut you off, but what is your basis for saying that?
My basis for saying that
is your feelings. You just feel it.
It's my true gut feeling, and it has a lot to do with some of my own personal experiences.
And if a cop pulled you over, Reggie, because of his true gut feeling, what would your reaction to that be?
Well, I've had that happen to me, and they pulled me over for nothing. And then
that's your assumption that you got pulled over for nothing. Look, Reggie. To say the reason these officers are resigning is because they support what happened to Mr. Floyd, you have no basis for saying that. My goodness. I'm Larry Elder.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
What is the current state of allowance for church attendance?
It's remarkable in different areas of the country. You have certain states who are abiding by the Constitution and deciding on a neutral basis if we're letting people to congregate, whether they're secular or religious, will do it in an even-handed fashion. But there are several states, like Nevada, that have chosen to treat churches and religious organizations worse. So you can go to a casino with hundreds or thousands of your best friends, but you can't go to church with 50 other people.
How do they answer that question?
Yeah, basically there's a couple problems. So people are familiar with these executive orders all over the country. They start by deciding on an ad hoc basis what's essential and what's not essential. And rather than putting church and spiritual things and worship in the essential category. They put it in the non-essential category, and so then they justify it by it's not a necessity for people. And I think that's something the government shouldn't be doing.
So, in effect, at least in California, I would imagine, churches are on a par with nail salons.
Sometimes nail salons are treated better than churches, and that's another thing that's remarkable. If you look at the way they categorize different types of uses, it seems like churches are always on the bottom end of the list, and so they'll reopen, as people know, they've done in phases. Well, they'll decide that, for example, we've had several cases where they're open bars before they're open churches, or nail salons, or, as I mentioned, casinos, or things like that. And so the way, I'm not sure how they get to the conclusion about what's necessary or not, but they're certainly putting religious worship.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
If you actually care about Black lives, you have an obligation to distance yourself from Black Lives Matter, the organization, the hashtag movement, whatever it is. I want to get that out up front. But Horace, how have you been processing this?
So our group, Project 21, was actually formed in the wake of the Rodney King riots. And several of us, I'm a founding member of the organization, but several of us were watching CNN and hearing this idea that it is the normal and legitimate way that Black Americans express their frustrations with civic life, that they run into the nearest Best Buy and grab as many DVD players as they can. And we knew, I knew this, my associates that I grew up with, and it turns out people from all walks of life knew that this is so far from reality. And we decided to form an organization that would say, we're Black Americans, and we want people to understand that this universal vision or perspective that's being put forward on the mainstream media about who Black Americans are doesn't represent or reflect the reality. And we are going to start having people that will appear on the news, appear in print, appear on the radio waves saying, hey, wait a second. There's a different perspective. When Martin Luther King said that people would be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character, we were astonished to hear that what people were saying is okay to say.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Is it of importance to us in interpreting the events of the last 2+ weeks that we are seeing all of this happen predominantly in hardcore Democrat-run cities, Gianna?
You know what's interesting about that is that Democrats won't even take credit for the fact that a lot of their policies have caused this to happen. You think about somebody like Joe Biden, who goes into George Floyd funeral with a video message talking about racial reconciliation and healing. Meanwhile, he's a big part of the reason why we have so much division in this country today. You think about the 94 crime bill. If we're going to talk about liberal cities, you can't forget about my hometown of Chicago, where you got a mayor there who provided, or rather asked for, 375 National Guardsmen in the city of Chicago and put them all in the downtown area. Meanwhile, the poor Black areas on the south side and west sides are left to fend for themselves. You're talking about minority-owned businesses ruined, which they don't have money to come back. Some of these folks don't even have insurance. And that's across all American spectrums, whether you be white, Black, or indifferent. We just lived through COVID. And now you got these liberals whose policies have created a huge mess from a financial tax purpose, a tax basis. And now you're disenfranchising poor people more by way of your policies, even through protests and looting. This is unimaginable. Who would have thought that this is where we would be in 2020? But if anybody is really listening and watching what's going on, this should be the best reason not to vote for liberals in any capacity. That's any office, whether it be president, Senate, House, state Senate, state House, mayor, any office. You shouldn't be voting for Democrats. And that's what I've taken away from this time.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. If anybody doubted how strong America is, look at all we've been through in the past few months and understand why we're still standing. We're still standing because we believe in the bonds that bring us together. We believe in freedom and liberty. And we believe that after all we've been through, nothing can defeat us. So let's cheer as America gets ready to rebuild and remake our lives bigger, stronger, better than ever before. Keep it here to find out how. We are the answer. Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
The 5-minute campaign strategy as of today, would it be spend all your time, resources, energy, and policy on PA and Wisconsin?
Well, it's not going to be that simple because the Democrats are going to be attempting to, go after Arizona. They've signaled that if they win Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Arizona, Biden's president of the United States. They're going to go after Florida because it's perennially close. They're going to have to make a decision about North Carolina. Are they going to go there? They're thinking they want to try and do Georgia, but they may not have the resources. So the problem is you can't just simply say, okay, I'm going to put all my chips on, Wisconsin and Pennsylvania because they're going to have to be playing defense in these other states. Now, the advantage that
Triple-8 971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. Larry Elder, ReliefFactor.com studio. President Trump says that we are considering pulling funding from the World Health Organizations unless they get their act together. He also weighed in on the recent Supreme Court decision that ruled the word sex in the Civil Rights Act of 1964 also includes sexual orientation, in a ruling that shocked a lot of people, 6-3, including a couple of so-called conservatives who joined the majority. Clarence Thomas, Judge Alito, dissented. All of that and more, 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. We were talking yesterday about the death of Rayshard Brooks, who was shot after he struggled with an officer, took the officer's taser, ran away, pointed the taser. Officer fired 3 times. The man is dead. Dan Bongino was an NYPD cop, also served with the Secret Service, and he and Geraldo Rivera, let's say, had a disagreement.
Go to what our friend and colleague Dan Bongino has said about the cop not knowing about the taser and all the rest of it. I feel sorry for the cops involved, but I feel a lot sorrier for the family of Mr. Brooks and obviously for him who's now dead. You never shoot a guy in the back. Now, you can hear on the tape the cops say, he got my taser. So you're not going to argue that he had some other weapon. He's a drunk driver. He's running away with the taser. Where's he going to run? How far is he going to run before he runs out of steam? He's a drunk.
You don't know what you're talking about. You have no idea what you're talking about.
Stop with the personal attack.
Because we had grown in the industrial area. era. So we were able to get trains and get supplies back to our soldiers while the Confederate was still riding horses. They were not able to get the supplies back fast enough, right? So what happened was once slavery was abolished in the South, the people in the South could no longer make their money from slaves. They had to move to the North to work in the industry to produce. And so the people in the North that already had established themselves in the industry moved to the South. And so that's where it was a transfer of people coming from the South to the North and people coming from the North to the South. There was never a big switch. So the same Democrats who hated black people from the beginning are the same ones who hate us now. And they use our cause. How did Black Lives Matter turn into something about LGBTQ? When blacks really don't support that. We're conservative. We're really not about that. Not only that, we don't support abortion. We're about working. This is the black culture. We ain't ever been about that. Not only that, we're not about feminism. No, we're not. Black women marry their husbands and respect their husbands. That's what we on. We're not on this, I do what I want. We don't do that. That's not our community, and you would understand. I know you understand what I'm saying. Come on. We don't do that. But yet these people are hijacking our movement, and the Democratic Party, they're trying to hijack our stuff. No.
Don't you hate it when you're a secular protester and a black woman of faith shows up at your protest?
We know Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. No one can get to the Father except through Him. Truth. No. Period. That's all we're saying. If you say you believe on Jesus, you're going to have to comply with what He said.
Are you here for Jesus? Or
I'm here for Jesus. Jesus is what I'm here for. Jesus is for Jesus.
Wait, one more time. May I ask you?
I'm here for Jesus.
Look, one more time. May I ask you, are you here for Jesus, which you can pray for every day, or are you here for the people who have died under the police?
You're here for the people.
You're here for the wrong reason.
Well, that's on you.
No, we're not.
You are here for the wrong reason.
Jesus is the Lord.
Go to your church.
Walk away, bro. Jesus is who I'm here for. Let's not get it twisted. Jesus.
Not what he wanted to hear. Lawrence Kudlow, the economic advisor to the president, was asked about systemic racism.
And folks do not work on the basis of discrimination. And folks understand the need for equality and opportunity. Here's a thought. President Obama, the first black president, was elected twice. And he got 79 million white votes. 79 million in 2 elections. Now, therefore, I find it hard to understand something called systemic racism.
Ben Carson also not down with the idea that America is systemically racist.
Of course not. I've seen systemic racism growing up. We are so much better than that now. Do we still have racist people? Of course. You're always going to have people who think superficially and don't think deeply. But, that doesn't mean that the whole system is corrupted and needs to be changed. But if you're looking to fundamentally change a society, and there are those who are looking to do that, you must first prove that it is dysfunctional. So anything that you can do that will create dysfunction helps to bolster that argument.
You know who else concurs with Ben Carson and Lawrence Kudlow's assessment? The former host on MSNBC, Chris Matthews, although he didn't realize what he was saying when he said,
mainly it's for white people, because white people won't vote for a guy, most of them, if they think they're racist.
When we come back, 1 million people have signed up for the Oklahoma rally, according to President Trump. I'm Larry Elder.
Attention business owners. As America gets back to work, will customers know you're there? With little warning, the coronavirus attacked our nation and our well-being in ways we never anticipated. The tragic loss of life, unprecedented economic upheaval, and a shattered sense of security has left many individuals and businesses in shambles. While the aftershocks could be felt for months to come, they may not have to. There is hope for an extraordinary turnaround of your bottom line. But will you be prepared for America's grand reopening? All signs point to the biggest business opportunity of our lifetime, coming as early as this summer. A recent survey of local advertisers shows a 10-point jump in the number of local advertisers who plan to maintain or increase their spending. 1 in 4 businesses expect to spend more in advertising by the end of June, and more than half expect to restart or surge their spending by this summer. As the numbers forecast increased spending from advertisers across the country, will your message be seen and heard? Will your business benefit from the pent-up consumer demand? Salem Surround is prepared to help you deliver the right advertising message to reach all potential customers wherever they are. Your business can be ready for a post-COVID-19 economy, but the time to act is now. Be at the front of the line as our economy begins to fire on all cylinders once again. For a free assessment of your marketing message and strategy, visit salemsurround.com or contact your local media strategist today.
Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
What happens if there's a criminal out there with a gun and starts shooting people? Who's going to respond if there's no police force?
Look, it is our top priority to keep every single member of our community safe. And if you look back at the last 150 years of our police department, it is becoming increasingly clear that that model of policing isn't working. So we need to invite in our whole community, the 9 members of the city council that came from every corner of our city to stand together to make this commitment. We don't have all the answers. And what we committed to was a community process to help reimagine public safety.
Stop for a second. This is just babble. This is just incoherent babble. I have been to Minnesota and to Minneapolis scores of times. It's just nuts. I don't know how Minneapolis elected a nutty city council that made this nutty person their city council president. But the idea that after 150 years, the Minnesota Police Department has to be defunded, that's nuts. This is the Democratic Party. This is Lisa Bender, Democrat, Minnesota Democrat Farm Labor Party, cut number 18.
Do you understand that the word dismantle or police free also makes some people nervous? For instance, what if in the middle of the night, my home is broken into? Who do I call?
Yes, I mean, I hear that loud and clear from a lot of my neighbors. And I know, and myself too, and I know that that comes from a place of privilege, because for those of us for whom the system is working, I think we need to step back and imagine what it would feel like to already live in that reality, where calling the police may mean...
It's insane. The Democratic Party is insane.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. America has been doing some soul searching lately. Perhaps you noticed. We're examining what's right with America and what can be made better. No other country does this kind of introspection better than us. Some of what we found we don't like and will change. Every life has the right to be treated with dignity and respect. That includes our law enforcement as well as every skin color. We've been
Share excerpts of today's show from Larry Elder's YouTube channel. Just go to youtube.com/The Larry Elder Show Radio and click on the subscribe button.
Hi, Scotland retired sergeant, LAPD. I was heavily involved in training during my time. I worked a lot of specialized units, including as a martial arts instructor. I worked SWAT, homicide, and I worked a lot in the inner cities. And a lot of the rhetoric now is not going to solve things. You have to go back through our history and understand human behaviors, but also the fact that as soon as Donald Trump came down the escalator, it became opposite day. And that's what has hijacked the Democratic Party, is whatever Trump was for, all of a sudden Pelosi, Schumer, and the like were absolutely 180 degrees against it, and to the point where they had to vilify not only his issues, but the president himself.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. Larry Elder, ReliefFactor.com studio. Going to be on Hannity again this evening with Leo Terrell around 6:35 p.m. Pacific time. Now, you've helped build MyPillow into the amazing company it is today, and Mike Lindell, the president and CEO, is giving back. He's making face masks for hospitals all around the country and giving them free. He's also offering great discounts on all MyPillow products. Just go to MyPillow.com, click on the radio listener specials. We're talking about buy one, get one free on a bunch of amazing products. Supima MyPillows, Giza Dream Sheets, MyPillow towels, Roll and Go Anywhere pillows, duvet covers, Giza pillowcases, bolster pillows, neck pillows. Plus, if you buy Mike Lindell's book, What Are the Odds? From Crack Addict to CEO, you're going to get free shipping and a $25 gift card. Just go to MyPillow.com, enter promo code Larry, or call 800-890-1843. Be sure and use promo code Larry. We looked up to find out about this black female who was the mayor of Minneapolis, and she most definitely is still around. She's roughly my age. Her name is Sharon Sales Belton, Belton, and was the first black mayor, and let alone black female mayor of Minneapolis. And it wasn't that long ago. She served from 2 terms from 1994 to 2001. And according to a caller, she called out the northern part of her city because of the crime rate and urged black people to stand up against the criminal element in that community. I'm going to try to reach out to her and find out if she's still around and she wants to weigh in on what's going on in her city and in other cities around the country as a result of the deaths of George Floyd and of Rayshard Brooks. Now, Chris is in San Diego. He's back. Chris, you have a better reception now, I assume.
Yes, sir. How are you, Mr. Elder?
I'm doing well, and you sound great.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm calling actually from San Bernardino, California, and I'm sorry to get off subject, but I just want you to know that my girlfriend and I, Sandra, and we love your show. We love what you stand for. We find that you are such an intelligent human being and a profound individual, and I would definitely love to run a campaign out in San Bernardino, California in 2024 because I love my current president, Mr. Donald J. Trump, and I would love to run it on the slogan, Larry Elder 2024 GAS, standing for Getting America Saged. And you should definitely have Candace Owens as your running mate. We love you, Larry. You are amazing, and I feel that many people would vote for you. Many.
Well, Chris, thank you so much, and thanks, Sandra, for me. As to my running mate, Candace Owens, if you look at the Constitution, it doesn't have any age limit for vice president. It does have an age limit for president. So I think she's 30 years old. She'll be barely 35 when we were to run in 2024. So I think that she'd be in good shape since there doesn't appear to be any prohibition on age regarding the VP running mate. I'm not quite sure I'd want that as a slogan. The gas movement. Can you imagine the kinds of things that people would say about that? Here comes Elder with his gas. Yeah, you're right. Elder does have a lot of gas. Woo! I'll give him that. I've told people this many, many times. I've been urged to run for everything from mayor up to and including President of the United States. It's always very, very flattering. And I always say that if I were to run, 2 things could happen. I could lose, I could win, I could lose, I could lose, I could win. Both are bad. I finally got that right. Anyway, thank you very much for that, Chris. That's so sweet. I appreciate it. Andrew is in Stanhope, New Jersey. Andrew, you're on the Larry Elder Show. Always nice to hear from you, Andrew.
Yeah, Larry, you caught me well. What I did is I spoke with people just like that woman did at protests and the Black Lives Matter, and I told them how I disagree with the movement because it's distracting from all the actual 99% plus of the killing in Chicago and elsewhere. So it's actually not even neutral. It's damaging because it draws attention away. And I talked about the importance of the 2-parent home and having the father in the home. And I did what you taught me, to use their source. So I said, I read in their charter after that, they said they want to dissolve the nuclear family. So the woman there was like, no, it's better if it's just a single parent, this researcher. And I said, well, I guess President Obama didn't read that paper, because President Obama said when a black kid has a father, he's 90% less likely to go to prison. He's 80% less likely to be on welfare, social. So I debunked her argument, which was it's bad to have two parents unless the same sex couple. But I told her I support that, so she lightened up. But it's interesting because when I first talked to them, it was all white people there. Then a black man with his kids came, and I told him the exact same things, and he completely agreed with me. And he even added to it, saying that's his goal, is to be a good father. And he sees the importance of it because he didn't have the father growing up, and he wants to be there for his kids. He had his two little kids there.
Right.
When I talked about Chicago, he looked like he was going to start crying. So it was just interesting because the white didn't like it, but the black people not only liked it, but agreed. And to say honestly, it's usually females from in college, when I was in college also for the news, covering these protests, that are the most stubborn or, one-sided. But it seems like the men that are there, the young men, they're mostly white. They seem more like accepting of listening to me. When I quoted Obama, I told them there was 100 shootings last 4th of July. They look real shocked, in Chicago.
Right.
So they seem much more, mainstream.
Well, Andrew, thank you so much for calling. You might also mention that Obama wrote a book called Dreams from My Father about his angst at not knowing his biological father. So this is a guy who knows what it's like not to be raised without a father, what it does to your ego, to your sense of self-worth. And yes, he said a kid raised without a father is 5 times more likely to be poor and commit crime. 9 times more likely to drop out, 20 times more likely to end up in jail. I'm Larry Elder.
All across America, The Larry Elder Show.
This is Owen Strand for townhall.com. A call is going out now for the dismantling of the Minneapolis Police Department. The president of the city council said this when asked about what to do in the case of a break-in.
Yes, I hear that loud and clear from a lot of my neighbors. And I know, and myself too, and I know that comes from a place of privilege, because for those of us for whom the system is working, I think we need to step back and imagine what it would feel like to already live in that reality, where calling the police may mean more harm is done.
There's no doubt that our cities and communities need restoration, including greater peaceful engagement between police and citizens. Yet the idea that wanting protection is privilege is not sound. In fact, it's absurd and won't restore anything. Police who act unjustly are accountable to the rule of law and must be. But there is no need to qualify what a society without police will look like. More harm will surely be done. May coming days bring greater safety and meaningful restoration. I'm Owen Strand.
ADF, fighting for those whose religious freedom is being violated. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
I want to share with you Raynard Jackson's comments, because this came from the White House, where the president is sort of, in his way, on a listening tour. I know that the rap against Donald Trump is that he doesn't listen to anybody, and that, of course, is a lot of hogwash. He does listen. He ultimately makes decisions based on his gut, on his instincts, on what got him to the White House in the first place. But quite frankly, anybody who's been around him recognizes he does spend a lot of time listening to advisors, listening to people who are willing to bend his ear. So here's Raynard Jackson.
But what I'd like to say to you, Mr. President, is kind of off the beaten path. I'd like to say to all the media assembled here that I wish they would quit lying about what you've done specifically for the black community. So you got radical liberal journalists like Joy Reid from MSNBC, Don Lemon from CNN, Roland Martin, who are putting more poison into the black community than any drug dealer, who are killing more black folks than any white person with a sheet over their face. How are they doing it? Spreading these lies about the economy you have, Mr. President, before the virus. was a continuation of Obama. That's just factually not true. I have a degree in accounting. I keep up with the economy. They're lying. So to all these folks on MSNBC, CNN, Roland Martin, what, you're afraid to have real black Republicans who know what the hell they're talking about? If you want to know the truth, if you want us to dissect the Obama economy, let's do it. And I think, Mr. President, your record will win the debate. Thank you.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
That's a good question to ask a leftist friend. Do you agree with Lincoln said that America is the last best hope of mankind or of the earth? But they would say no. Typical article I have here, The Atlantic, which produces massive amounts of nonsense by intellectuals. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's become nihilistic. We are living in a failed state. The coronavirus didn't break America. It revealed what was already broken. And this guy's a staff writer, George Packer, for The Atlantic. I invite George Packer onto the show. It's useless. It's useless. They never debate.
America, we have a country to save. And now, here's Larry Elder.
Larry, love your show, of course. This is Victoria from San Diego. About 2 years ago, I decided to play The Jungle Book for the children, and you know that book. And 2 years ago, Amazon had a disclaimer. They wanted me to get a note for permission for their children to see it. No, I didn't do that. But that was just 2 years ago. The Jungle Book, because of Tar Baby. Horrible, ridiculous that they would ask me to do that or anyone else to do it. I just wanted to share that with you. It's just kind of in keeping with what's going on today. The Jungle Book was a great cartoon. Mm-hmm. All right. Thanks, Larry. Have a great day. Have a great show today.
What about Huckleberry Finn? It really is an anti-racism novel, but that's been restricted and banned in some cases as well. 888-971-SAGE. 888-971-7243. Larry Elder, ReliefFactor.com studio. President Trump wants to have a rally in Oklahoma, and he says over 1 million people have signed up.
Great job. Oklahoma's at a very low number. They've done really fantastic work. They have a pretty new, magnificent arena, as you probably have heard, and we're getting exact numbers out, but we're either close to or over 1 million people wanting to go. We have a 22,000-seat arena, but I think we're going to also take the convention hall next door, and that's going to hold 40,000, so we'll have 22,000 plus 40,000, which would mean that we'll have over 900,000 people that won't be able to go, but hopefully they'll be watching. But it's an amazing. Nobody's ever heard of numbers like this. I think we're going to have a great time. We're going to talk about our nation. We're going to talk about where we're going, where we've come from.
I think he's been consulting Brian Williams on those numbers.
The number of cases in Oklahoma has declined precipitously, and we feel very confident going forward with the rally this coming weekend. We're working closely with the governor. We'll have measures in place to be screening people coming in to the facilities, but Oklahoma's really led the way in demonstrating that we can safely reopen. And so as we gather to hear from the president and hear about the stakes in this election, we'll also be celebrating a state that's demonstrated every day that you can put health first and open up and do all those things at the same time.
Now, as you know, I've got a documentary coming out on Friday called Uncle Tom. It comes out on June 19th, which is also known as Juneteenth, and that's a date that we picked because it's the day that the Emancipation Proclamation is celebrated. I thought that would be an appropriate day for a film that discusses whether or not a black person can have a point of view different from the masses without being dismissed as an Uncle Tom. We thought it would be an ideal day for that. Well, that's the same day that President Trump initially chose for his Tulsa, Oklahoma rally. He's now moved it, and here's what an Associated Press reporter said about why he moved it.
First of all, just to be clear, campaign officials very much knew that it was Juneteenth when they selected that date. They expected some blowback. They were caught off guard by the intensity of it. The president eventually bowed to pressure and moved it from the 19th to the 20th, so it's Saturday. In terms of venue, no, not yet. It's an indoor arena. It's downtown. It must be noted, an arena that has canceled all of its events in June and in July because of the pandemic, because of health concerns. Yet they're reopening for this one night for this rally.
Missy is in West Virginia. Missy, always nice to hear from you.
Hello, Mr. Elder. How are you?
I'm doing great.
All right. So the Atlanta mayor today said that she was ticked because she's tired of this happening to black people and that this is never going to happen again. It's outrageous to me that society as a whole is justifying the criminal actions of a criminal who committed 3 felonies against police officers, and the officer is demonized for doing what he's supposed to do, which is to protect all of society against crime. What happened to our country?
Well, Missy, this is why, in my opinion, so many officers are resigning. You heard the caller earlier today suggest that the reason the officers are resigning is because these are bad cops. And rather than have the hammer come down on them, they're getting out of Dodge early. That's what he suggested. Really? Officer fired, I think it was 2 days later. The officer involved in the death of Rayshard Brooks, not even put on administrative leave, pending an investigation, fired on the spot. The officer involved in the death of Brooks, of George Floyd. He was fired, and all 4 officers have been fired. Again, this is before any kind of due process, so I believe that's going to blow back. And if you're a cop trying to do a good job, as most of them are, and you're finding out what happens when and if something becomes politically hot, that the brass is not standing up for you, this is what, in my opinion, so many officers are resigning, and why, in my opinion, so many people are now going to think twice about becoming police officers. Now, when your life is in chaos, your home is your safe haven, right? Your most valuable asset. Well, imagine losing it to some online scammer. In a sec, you've got no place to live. Your security, your nest egg, gone. This crime is called home title theft, and the FBI calls it one of the fastest growing crimes. This is why I urge you to get Home Title Lock. The title to your home is online where thieves can find it. Forge your signature on a quitclaim deed. Now it appears you sold your home. Then they'll borrow against your home, leave you with the payments. Why go through the hassle of attempting to get your bank and insurance company to protect you when you can get Home Title Lock and sleep easy at night? One way to avoid this nightmare, Home Title Lock. Go to HomeTitleLock.com. Register your address to see if you're already a victim. Use code Larry for 30 free days of protection to help get you through the crisis. That's HomeTitleLock.com. Be sure and use code Larry. HomeTitleLock.com. Use code Larry.
Larry will be right back. Stay tuned.
If anybody doubted how strong America is, look at all we've been through in the past few months and understand why we're still standing. We're still standing because we believe in the bonds that bring us together. We believe in freedom and liberty. And we believe that after all we've been through, nothing can defeat us. So let's cheer as America gets ready to rebuild and remake our lives bigger, stronger, better than ever before. Keep it here to find out how. We are the answer. Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
The 5-minute campaign strategy as of today, would it be spend all your time, resources, energy, and policy on PA and Wisconsin?
Well, it's not going to be that simple because the Democrats are going to be attempting to, go after Arizona. They've signaled that if they win Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Arizona, Biden's president of the United States. They're going to go after Florida because it's perennially close. They're going to have to make a decision about North Carolina. Are they going to go there? They're thinking they want to try and do Georgia, but they may not have the resources. So the problem is you can't just simply say, okay, I'm going to put all my chips on, Wisconsin and Pennsylvania because they're going to have to be playing defense in these other states. Now, the advantage that Trump has is that he's got more resources and he's got a bigger, better digital infrastructure, which will matter a lot. So, he's going to be able to play in all those states. He can play in the 3 Great Lakes states. He can play in Iowa. He can play in North Carolina. He can play in Florida. He can play in Arizona. But I'm not yet certain that the Biden campaign is going to have the resources to compete in all of those states. I mean, Florida is a $50 to $70 million proposition, and North Carolina is a $35 to $50 million proposition. So those, you start, and we haven't talked about Ohio. Isn't that interesting how little we talk about Ohio this election?
My home state has gained its confidence under Michael DeMine. My home state is solid red. You had to worry about it in your elections, but we've got that locked up now.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
For folks like you and me, this was a moment ago, especially for you. You lived through this. You were an adult. This was your friend. This was a student. And the parallels with what are happening in this country today are so striking. I mean, we could have talked about this book just because it's the 50th anniversary and it's a good book and it's interesting. And, you and I have met. But I mean, the parallels.
Welcome back to the pain-free relieffactor.com studios. It's the Sage, Larry Elder.
When you take a police officer's weapon and you attempt to destabilize him or to incapacitate him, especially with a taser, if you hit a cop with a taser, it's going to knock him down. It's going to put him in a position where he can't respond, and he has a sidearm on. So he has 2 choices. He could let you hit him with that taser, and the possibility is then you go to get his gun, or he could take you down. And in this case, I'm sure that's what the officer did. But you know what, Steve? We shouldn't be talking about this. This should be a grand jury. This should be a real investigation. All this stuff that everybody's speculating right now, that's what investigations are for.
I think we're being drawn into this false choice idea. The reality is we need 2 things. We need reformation of how police officers do their jobs, how law enforcement does its job. Because what happened yesterday to Rayshard Brooks was a function of excessive force and the decision that the fact that they were either embarrassed or panicked led them to murder a man who they knew only had a taser in his hand.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243, Larry Elder, ReliefFactor.com studio. That last speaker, Stacey Abrams, who is on the short list of VP candidates that Joe Biden reportedly is considering. Growing pressure on Biden to choose somebody who is, quote, a person of color, close quote. And the speaker before her was Bernard Carrick, the former commissioner, New York City. The president is considering pulling funding from the World Health Organization. That's the organization that parroted the talking points given them by China, which was lying about when they first discovered the coronavirus, the novel coronavirus, and also lying about whether or not it was transmitted human to human. Here's what the president said.
The World Health Organization has been very disappointing. To the world, they've been disappointing. And we, as you know, paid $450 million and close to $500 million on some years. But for years and years, we paid far more than anybody else. And they've been a puppet of China. And so, no, I'm not reconsidering unless they get their act together. And I'm not sure they can at this point, but maybe certainly over the years they might. But they have been a disaster. They were wrong on every call, including when I said we're going to close up the United States to people coming in from China, where China was heavily infected at that time and possibly still is. And I closed it, and that was a wise decision.
Now, I know people on the left hate the president's guts, but can you at least acknowledge that he's right about the World Health Organization? Can you at least acknowledge that he's right about how China fed them all sorts of propaganda and they simply parroted? Can you at least acknowledge that? Can you also acknowledge that both presidents on the Republican side and the Democratic side have for decades complained about the NATO countries not stepping up and meeting their payment obligations? Can you deny that? And can you deny that Trump has gotten them to step up?
I said we're going to bring down the soldier count to 25,000 soldiers. It varies. It's around 52,000 now, but it varies. But it's a lot. And as you know, those are well-paid soldiers. They live in Germany. They spend vast amounts of money in Germany. Everywhere around those bases is very prosperous for Germany. So Germany takes, and then on top of it, they treat us very badly on trade. We have trade with the EU, and Germany being the biggest member, very, very badly on trade, and we're negotiating with them on that. But right now, I'm not satisfied with the deal they want to make. They've cost the United States hundreds of billions of dollars over the years on trade.
Meanwhile, in Seattle, where the protesters have their own little state, a black woman showed up with a message that a lot of these protesters didn't want to hear.
Plead with you, my guys. Only Jesus, my people. Only Jesus. Black Lives Matter sounds cute, but Black Lives Matter can't save you. Only Jesus.
Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter didn't go on the cross for you. Black Lives Matter didn't die for you. Black Lives Matter can't grab you into the kingdom of God. Black Lives Matter can't do it, but Jesus can do it. Jesus can put you back in your rightful place.
This is about the people who have died.
As a king.
This is about the people who have died.
You are a king. You are a king. My friend.
Not a message some of these protesters wanted to hear. Craig is in Michigan. Craig, you're on the Larry Elder Show. Thank you so much for calling.
Yeah, how you doing, Larry? I just wanted to comment. I don't believe my parents ever had that talk with me, but I had common sense enough to know to do what the police officer said. They have to stop coddling all these morons. Oh, my God.
Well, Craig, as I said yesterday, my parents sat my brother. I don't recall a sit down, but I just recall my father saying this over and over again when something would happen. Something might happen on TV. Something might happen in the newspaper. Something might happen in the neighborhood. And my dad would just simply say, if ever you're stopped by the police, be polite, cooperate fully. That's what they always said. My dad said, if you feel you're mistreated, get a badge number, get a name, and you and I can deal with it while we're both still alive. I don't remember the part where they said resist violently and, if at all possible, run. I just don't really remember that. President Trump weighed in on the decision by the Supreme Court 6-3 that ruled the word sex in the Civil Rights Act also included sexual orientation.
No, they've ruled. I've read the decision, and some people were surprised, but they've ruled, and we live with their decision. That's what it's all about. We live with the decision of the Supreme Court. Very powerful, a very powerful decision, actually. But they have so ruled.
Now, what did I tell you? President Trump is a populist. He's perfectly okay with the idea that an employer ought not discriminate against somebody based upon his or her sexual orientation. He probably feels that it's a reasonable step to take. Here's the problem, Mr. President. You're not a lawyer. When you take the act that prohibits discrimination based upon sex and you expand it to include sexual orientation, can we at least agree that those are two different things? Then you are legislating from the bench. This is exactly what we, meaning conservatives who believe in the original interpretation of the Constitution, loathe. The idea that because you think something is sound public policy, and I'm sure President Trump thinks it's sound public policy, it's okay for the Supreme Court to rewrite the law to create it into the sound public policy measure that you want. You allow them to do that for this, they can do that for any damn thing. That's why this decision is outrageous, and that's why the president should be outraged.
No, they've ruled. I've read the decision, and some people were surprised, but they've ruled, and we live with their decision. That's what it's all about. We live with the decision of the Supreme Court. Very powerful, a very powerful decision, actually. But they have so ruled.
It's obviously he's not unhappy with the outcome. He ought to be unhappy with the reasoning. Now, Nancy from Texas said this: I love Relief Factor. I can do more now. Yay! After teaching riding lessons and taking care of my 5 horses daily, I used to be so tired. Now I can keep on going, getting more yard work, housework, and cooking done now. I have more stamina because I do not hurt. Feels so good to be able to do more like I used to. It did take a couple of months on Relief Factor for me to really notice the huge difference. It slowly happened for me. Luckily, I just kept taking it, and the improvement is amazing. Thank you. What about you? 3-week quick start is only $19.95. It can be at your door in just 2 to 3 days. Over 70% of the people that order the 3-week quick start go on to order more. ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com, or call 800-500-8384, 800-500-8384.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Exclusive from General Flynn. This is at westernjournal.com. Freedom is oxygen, like the air we breathe that keeps our lungs full and our hearts beating. The celestial feeling of freedom brings a sense of peace to our souls. Freedom must never be taken for granted. Securing our freedom demands a high price. And that price requires hard work and sacrifice. Both will bind us all by the value they produce, but only if we are willing to seek new opportunities and new ideas. Those who have sacrificed the most, those who have given the last true measure of devotion that derives from the love of faith, family, and the cause of freedom, for all of us to be free and for the betterment of our republic and the free world, cannot be allowed to have died in vain. Theirs is the ultimate sacrifice, and heaven is their reward. Our future.
And the reason BLM looks the other way, because those deaths are important to the left's anti-Second Amendment agenda. God bless you, Larry.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243, Larry Elder, ReliefFactor.com studio. In about a half hour, I'll be on The Hannity Show, along with Leo Terrell 2.0. Now, yesterday, I left you with the following zip poll question. Joe Biden is under pressure from the left wing of his party. That's kind of redundant, isn't it? The left wing of the Democratic Party. To pick a female running mate who is a, quote, person of color, close quote. Do you think Joe Biden's pick for a running mate will be a female of color? 80% of you thought yes, 20% said no. He's under a lot of pressure to pick somebody like Stacey Abrams or somebody like Kamala Harris. And let me tell you something. People always say that the vice presidential pick is pretty inconsequential. People don't vote for the vice president, they vote for the president, and that is generally true. But you're talking about somebody like Joe Biden, who, let's put it, appears to be challenged in many ways. There is an excellent chance that whoever is the vice president will sooner than maybe we anticipate, become president. So if Kamala Harris was unacceptable as a candidate, why is she acceptable as a possible president? Now, here's the poll question for tonight. The Atlanta cop who shot and killed the black suspect, Rayshard Brooks, was fired 2 days after the shooting. Do you think the firing of the officer was fair, or do you think the officer was denied due process? Either yes or no. Go to your App Store and search under Zip Poll USA. Be sure and use my code SAGE, and we'll do this tomorrow. I am Larry Elder, and we've got a country to save.